is based on a trip to Scotland that I took a couple of years ago. And it was the basis actually for my show that I had in June. And I've just shown my work locally. There's a really quite a fantastic little centre in Etobicoke, which was just opened about 2 years ago. And the location's lousy, but the space is really wonderful and shows off the work quite nicely. So I had about 36 works, and just these are some of them. I put this one first because loose watercolour is really sometimes the basis that I base a bigger picture on, which is the next one. This is called Mystical Height. The other one was Worth the Climb. We did a lot of climbing in Scotland. We were on a piece of property that was 1,000 acres, and we would climb up. I would go up with the fishermen, either driving first thing in the morning, or we'd certainly make the climb a couple of times a day. It was just wonderful. Now with this one, a lot of people see that that's water, but when I painted it, it wasn't. It's actually quite dark, but it doesn't really matter to me. I mean, I'm just getting the idea of, I guess, being up high. A lot of my work, I just imagine that I just seem to be up high, as if I'm a bird looking down on things. And sometimes if I sketch something from straight on, I'll just say, okay, what's this going to look like if I'm up high? So that other work that you saw ends up being quite different when I deal with it with acrylic, because it becomes more of a compositional, compositional issues in terms of color and form and shape and line, so on. This one I believe is called Loch Haven. There were a series of locks going up, and this was the highest one. And then the climb that I showed before, we went right up with a guide up behind there. So again, I'm up high looking down, and so it really, the landscape becomes really a series of marks that are built up, colored marks basically. And what I'm trying to do is capture the feeling that I felt, and the colors. Next. This is called Meeting Place. There appear to be two figures. They actually were trees, but that's the way it worked out. And
they look like trees to me.
Yeah. Some people think they're figures. People say, why don't you do figures in your work? Anyway. So this was taken from an ink drawing that I'd done from a sketch, and then I developed it from there. But it has a moody sort of feel to it, I guess, climbing at night. I'm definitely attracted to northern landscapes. I went to Mexico in the same year, and I did a lot of sketching, but I had no desire to paint anything. Just didn't appeal in terms of color, at least at this point in time in my life. Next. This is called Wacky Land with Rock. And the sketch that I made came from the climb that we did, and so I'm here with a large rock, another one, and just the idea of a lock off in the distance. I mean, my work generally has water, usually has water, sky, land of some sort, vegetation, interpreted through marks, scratches, shapes. Next. This is Rollicking Landform. And here I guess I was trying to capture just some of the beauty of the Scottish Highlands and the combination of fields with trees and rolling hills.
These are all paper?
These are all acrylic on canvas. Yeah, this would be at least 5 feet, 5 or 6 feet by say 3. That's just my poor taping job. No, no, I would have painted on this stretched actually. Sometimes I paint unstretched if I'm at a workshop like this, but it actually is an even edge. Next. Now I reverted to flowers here. I was throwing a party for my sister's 50th birthday, and someone came with this beautiful bouquet of flowers, and the place where we were staying in Scotland was just they had these bouquets everywhere, and so I thought it just seemed to fit in, so I sat down and just did this bouquet, and then this was the idea of the dining room. I'd actually taken a photograph of this dining room, but it had these curtains and then these doors that would open up so you could see the Highlands behind, and it really had a wonderful feeling about it. Okay, next. Oh no, I had a bouquet, a live bouquet there, and as I say, I thought it just seemed to fit. I was doing these and I wanted a break from the landscape, I think, too. So just the color, and this birthday was in November. It just was like so wonderful. I just had to do them. Okay, next. Now this is a smaller work actually, and it's just an interpretation of the garden that was around this home where we stayed. At night, we would be out playing croquet at night, and about 11 o'clock, and it was still light. It had this very sort of eerie feel about it, but they had beautiful flowers and around. Okay, next. With the watercolors, I generally, I don't know whether that can focus, maybe it can't, but I generally, okay, go to the next one then. Use watercolor, and then I'll go over with maybe chalk or pastel or watercolor pencil crayon. This was more or less an interpretation of the garden. Sometimes I find, because I begin more in reality based, and then as I work with the subject more and more, I can get away from it. And so here's the idea of the stones in the garden and yellow flowers, and then the stream beyond and the hills, and so it's just sort of that wonderful feeling of just that moment and time and that color and so on. Okay, next. Now this one is a acrylic on canvas. It's about 2 feet by 2 feet, I would say, and I've used a modeling paste here and sort of built up a texture, and then used I use J-cloth a fair bit when I paint on canvas rather than a brush. I like using my hand better. I can get a lot more interesting marks than with a brush, and so it just develops, the idea of some grass, maybe water, or moss or whatever, and old log, and then off in the distance.
Nancy, do you paint and then go back into it?
Oh, definitely. Pardon?
Do you paint and then go back into it later and work on it?
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah, I worked on this. Some of them I work on a lot. Others just, just go better. But definitely, yeah, I always keep my pots of paint and then just paint out. So it is a process of just painting out, leaving what I like, painting it out, going over entire sections. This section came fairly easily, but this section I probably reworked, I don't know, could have reworked 20 times, until I got it right. Just a lot, yeah. So it just depends.
It's very rich. You have
Actually, Eric Gamble was one that did that, because we had to do a painting in his course where you had to mix the darkest color that you could mix without, using black. And I think it was a burnt umber and an ultramarine blue that I put together as the base for the canvas. Then you had to work forward up to the lightest color. And I'll show my students this painting. It's great to show them and say, how many colors, do you think I mixed on this? Well, I ended up mixing, I think, close to 80 colors. And I recorded them all in my notebook so they can see what the color looked like on white paper, and then I put the strip down beside it, and then, how the color is different and how I built up, and all the mixing that I had to do to get there. That was a really good exercise. because sometimes I do like to work on a dark canvas and then work forward. But I think that was one thing I learned in those first watercolors I did. They were really, the first ones I did were really blah, and I just couldn't get the contrast, the dark, the light, the light and the darks working. I mean, I guess that's always a struggle. But I did have to rework this a lot, I think, to bring up some of the lights here. And
It's so lively, there's always a sense of movement in your landscapes. You're never quite still.
no. Yeah, and I guess that's part, and I mean, I guess that's the life force. Like, I happen to be using the land as a vehicle to get that life force. I mean, I could use the figure, I could use any subject, I could do it in an abstract way. But there's something, I don't know, about the landscape that really has a pull for me. That I really, it's very satisfying, And I think now, well, as opposed to my other work, I mean, I still have to struggle with this, but I think here I'm getting a variety of marks, whereas before, I wasn't. But, that's always the struggle, I guess, to try to do that. Okay, next. This is called Lochland. Now this one a lot of my landscapes I didn't actually see that. I didn't even do a sketch of it. I just began, and I just will put water on the paper, and then that sort of happens, and then I start seeing more and more. But as I said before, I often have water, then I have rock, now this has a bush. This is sort of unusual. I'm not just sure. Maybe I looked at a sketch and there was a bush. I don't know. But I just really enjoy looking at these little parts. And I think that was something else I learned from Eric, looking at these little sections and making them, come alive. Each little part has to be interesting. Another artist, David Wright, he used a term, playground for the eye. And I like that because when I do the initial painting, then I'll leave it, let it dry. Then I'll go back and work in. I will sometimes go over in pencil, and then the pencil will suggest other things that I can do to it. So each time I go back into it, I see more to do. Next. I guess I should. And this is Fish Haven, just another lock painting. Next. And this is called Solitary Land. This was one that just happened on the paper. Next. And it's called Peach Glow.
So what are the paper sizes, Nancy? Do they vary a bit?
They do vary. This would be, I guess, in real life about this big. Yeah. Next. It's called Afternoon Destination. But once again, I didn't work from a sketch. That just sort of happened. Next. And land pattern. I really like words abstraction. I think more, but
Well, you're close. I think you're there.
I don't know.
I mean, they're referential, but
I revert sort of back and forth. Next.